storytelling can really come in there. So talk to us a little bit about the inspiration for this book.
Yeah.
And how is storytelling in general different from storytelling when you're trying to create change or transformation, which is the focus of this book?
Yeah. Well, the inspiration for this book was Nancy and I wanted to understand, is there a pattern to the kinds of stories that organizations tell over and over? And so we researched movements in business of all kinds. We mapped the life cycles of many companies over many eras on giant graph paper and put that up on the walls. And we plotted all the things that they had done and the results that they'd seen, and we found a common pattern. When they went through major transformations, there was a common shape that underlied that. Sort of the momentum that they gained with that change had a particular pattern to it. And then we studied the communication tools that they used, and we found that the ones who were able to navigate those transformations the best had used story-based communication. And what's really mind-blowing about that, I think, when Nancy and I both realized that, we sat back and we looked at the shapes of those transformations that we saw, and it actually followed the shape of story. It actually does. It follows, in the book we talk about it as a 5-act structure, but the underlying structure is the 3-act structure, which is a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the reason that's so important to understand in the context of change is that that 3-act structure describes the journey that a person goes through that results in their transformation. And so if you understand that story actually is, especially the heroic journey, is fundamentally about transformation, then it makes sense that you would use that form of communication to help people understand transformation, to help people cope with transformation, because it helps them see the journey that they're going on themselves. From their current reality to the struggles of trying to be something different, and then being changed in the end.
Yeah, it's all about the story in the head, and then the story that doesn't maybe even exist, that we are trying to get to, right? And helping that transition from the way I think my reality is organized now to the way I think I want to organize my reality, and sometimes you're not even sure on what that might look like. And I often tell people, I say, we're asking employees to walk into, this void, this tunnel, and saying we'll get to the other side, but you're not giving them any vision or a map. How are you expecting that level of engagement? You can get compliance, yes, but commitment, which is what you need for a transformation of this sort. It's not it's no ordinary transformation. It's not we're moving office people. The shape of our industry might be shifting. Right?
We're changing jobs. We're going to be doing something entirely different tomorrow than what we know how to do today, and that's a scary proposition for most people. And as you said, I think that the journey of change begins when a leader visualizes a different reality. They have a dream, and they want to communicate to that people to work in their organization, people in their industry. And so that, for many leaders, I think, is where the journey starts and ends. I know where I want to go. I articulate it the very best possible way that I can, and it should just happen. If everyone understands why it's a good thing to go in that direction. The reality is that that's just the beginning of the journey. In true storytelling form, that communication of your vision is actually just the inciting incident that they talk about in the world of storytelling, which is the beginning of the process of change. And the very next step in that journey, the first stage is dream, the second stage is leap. And I think that's the big epiphany, the aha for leaders, is that everyone you're communicating that vision to has a choice. They have a choice to say yes or to say no. And if you communicate really well, they're more likely to say yes, and then the change starts to happen. But you have to get them to cross that, to make that leap of faith, to say, I understand how you've described that future, and it sounds kind of alluring, but there's a big gap between here and there, and I'm frightened about that unknown space. So you have to give them reasons to believe that it's going to be good for them, and that has to be compelling enough to get them to even just take the next step.